Good morning. Welcome to the first breakout session of the EUCAD2021 conference. My name is Stephane Dreher, and I will have the pleasure of moderating this session today. I'm Senior Manager, Innovation and Deployment at ERTICO ITS Europe, working on connectivity, automation, and blockchain. I'm, among other things, coordinating the EUCAD Coordination and Support Action funded by the European Commission, which focuses on supporting the coordination of research and innovation in CCAM in Europe. I'm also a member of the CCAM Partnership Executive Group, leading Cluster 7 on coordination. In this session, today we will discuss the next level of large-scale demonstrations. Previous and ongoing demonstration projects for CCAM systems and services have shown that further testing of highly automated systems and services is necessary. Large-scale demonstrations are thus really at the heart of the new CCAM partnership, and a large part of the funding on CCAM in Horizon Europe will be dedicated to it. In order to organize the next level of demonstrations, we need, however, to take stock of what has been done so far, review the benefits, limitations, and lessons learned, and identify the needs for the next steps. On the next slide, to discuss, if we can have the slides. Yes, thank you. To discuss this topic today, I have with me a panel of 5 speakers who have great experience in the organization and execution of pilot and demonstration activities in Europe. I will introduce them briefly just before each presentation, but I would just like to say that with the 3 first speakers, we will set the scene with aspects related to coordination, citizens engagement, and vehicle technologies. And then we will look at 3 practical examples with projects involving different types and scales of demonstration activities. On the next slide, please. So similar to the plenaries that you have seen in the last days, we will use Slido for the interaction. I will ask you 2 poll questions through the sessions. For the questions and answers, you can submit questions anytime during the presentation, but we will answer them only after the end of all presentations. Please also indicate the name of the person if you would like to address one speaker in particular. Now, just to note, on the right, when you see the Slido, please select the right session. So we are in breakout 1. In order to warm up, I would like to ask you all in the audience a first slide of questions. Have you ever taken a ride in an automated vehicle? Please answer either yes or no. I will let this poll run while I will continue with my introduction. On the next slide, important aspects that were repeated across nearly all the plenary sessions in the last 2 days are the needs for sharing, collaboration, and coordination. We heard that in-house development does not work anymore, and that to be smarter, we need to share more, and that we need an integrated approach. This is also why we built the partnership. Research and innovation and demonstration need to cover the whole value chain of CCAM, from technology to infrastructure, legislation, business, and citizens. As new large-scale demonstrations will be organized, it's important to link the research and innovation and testing activities across Europe to achieve really a successful cross-sector collaboration between all the stakeholders. But as many diverse tests are ongoing across Europe, and a coordination is needed for synergies between tests and as well to optimize the investments and avoid redundancies. This is why we need to have what I listed here. So first, we need to map the CCAM landscape to identify the synergies and gaps. This is very important to optimize investments and funding and to develop the roadmaps and strategies for the next steps. We need to develop common approaches for testing and assessing impacts, because we need to be able to compare the results and the impacts. For that, we need as well to define common key performance indicators. We need to improve exchange of knowledge and experience, facilitate the setup of demonstrations, and finally as well facilitate data sharing. So yesterday it was also said that data question will be key, and a lot of data is generated by the different testing and demonstration activities across Europe. And it would make sense to reuse them as much as possible. To support all this, we have built in the EUCAD project an open online knowledge base as a one-stop shop to access information about activities and tools related to CCAM. I invite you all to consult the link I put on the bottom of the slide, where you will see a comprehensive overview of RNI activities and pilots in Europe, lessons learned, impact assessment methodologies, data sharing framework, and as well information about regulation and policies and standards. On the next slide, I'm also glad to announce that we will be very soon having a first European map of CCAM testing and pilot activities. We will now, yes, thank you. We will now finally be able to see what is being developed, tested, and demonstrated, and where. On this small extract here that you see, it's really impressive to see how much is happening in Europe. And we have mapped so far 150 test sites for ongoing and also very recently finished projects. They are classified by types of activities, so it can be public road tests, corridors, test tracks, and simulators, visible in different colors here on the left. And we will also be able to distinguish between shuttle and passenger vehicle projects. When a site is selected, you can see the projects that are running on these sites here, like, for example, the show project here. We are also currently carrying out an analysis of results of more than 50 Horizon 2020 funded projects. This will allow identifying the synergies and the gaps I already mentioned, and it's really essential to plan ahead for the next steps. Just before I finalize my introduction, on the next slide, I want to briefly define what we are talking about today. In the partnership cluster 1 and the future calls, 3 types of testing activities have been identified. First, the pilots. These consist in testing the combination of many fragmented technological enablers. It's used to prove with prototypes the safe functioning of the solutions, with test drives in operational environments. Then we have the field operational tests, which build the next step for each case. They are meant to enhance user acceptance closer to deployment. And finally, we have the living labs, which provide the entire infrastructure, including connectivity, mixed dynamic traffic environments, and user communities. And the idea is that it should facilitate the co-creation process and foster harmonization. Now, before we start with the other presentation, I would like to briefly look at the first poll results. So the question was, have you ever taken a ride in an automated vehicle? Okay, that's very interesting. And so we see a big majority of yes. I guess that's because we are also with a specialized audience here today. I guess we would have maybe different results if we would have a wider audience or the general public responding to that. But this makes, for me, I think, a perfect transition to the first presentation and the need as well to raise awareness and to develop more demonstration and trials. And for that, I will then hand over now to our first speaker, which is Henriette Cornet. So Dr. Henriette Cornet is a senior manager at UITP, which is the International Association of Public Transport in Brussels and Belgium. So she's project coordinator of the EU-funded project SHOW, which will be as well in the center of the presentation. So Henriette, the floor is yours. Sorry, Henriette, we cannot hear you. I think you're muted. Sorry.
Sorry for that, the usual thing. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here today, and thank you, Stephane, for your kind introduction. So I will jump directly into the topic, so that because we have many speakers, and we want to discuss this topic with you together during the Q&A session. So let's go. I will talk today about why citizens' involvement is so important and so crucial, so essential in large-scale demonstration for CCAM. Next, please. And I hope. So a word about UITP first, and the connect and how UITP is working with CCAM. So first, UITP is the International Association of Public Transport, and it brings together 1,800 members in the association, all working in the field of public transport. We worked already hard on the topic of CCAM for a long time ago, and one outcome of this was the first policy brief on automated vehicles that we published in 2017. And that's where we really emphasize how important it is that CCAM is deployed as part of the public transport, as shared mobility. We are also, UITP is also active in the discussion around the CCAM partnership, for example, regarding the large-scale demonstration, like the topic today, regulations and societal aspects. We also launched by UITP the Space project in 2018 with really the key players of around CCAM. And in 2020, beginning of 2020, the SHOW project started, and I am the project coordinator of this very, very large-scale project funded by the European Commission that Stephane mentioned before. And this project aims to be the biggest ever initiative for large-scale demonstrations in Europe, because we have 69 partners involved in the project. We will deploy vehicles in 2022 in real life operation around 17 cities around Europe. So it will be very interesting. Stay tuned to it. If you want more information, go on the project on the website that you see on the screen, or don't hesitate to get in touch with me. I will be happy to give you more insights. UITP is also involved in other CCAM projects funded by the European Commission. The arcade that Stephane mentioned before, Drive to the Future, and also GECO. This last one is on governance for mobility system. Next slide, please. So what are we testing for? The big question. And regarding the citizens, well, what is it about? The benefits of CCAM that you have heard during the plenary sessions the past few days are really about, so can only be achieved. So we speak about benefits around safety, about road congestion, environmental impact, and so on, can only be reached if the citizens accept the CCAM service and if they use it in their everyday life. And until now, many trials have been conducted, and we saw in the Slido just before that many of you took part to such trials all over the world, and that was very nice. I mean, that was very positive to have these trials, usually over a short period of time, usually on a remote area. But it was great to raise awareness to the citizen about what are automated shuttles, what is automated mobility, and a bit with a touch, I don't know, I hope you agree with this, a bit with a touch of entertainment. So people usually, when we conducted survey, people usually were quite happy about driving and being in an AV, saying that AVs are fun, and that's something already positive. It was also the start of nudging behaviors, and what I meant with that is that we created, these trials helped to create a kind of a mental model that AVs are for shared mobility. So you know I'm speaking of these shuttles, around 12 passenger shuttles, and it came to the mind of the people, oh, okay, that's how AV can be used for. So that was also very positive. And we could collect, when I say we, is whoever conducted the trial actually all over the world. First users' opinions have been collected through surveys, usually after the trials, asking them their perception on the AVs, which is super central as well, because, for example, if you take safety, you have the safety as such, how safe the AVs is, but the perception of safety, how people feel within the AVs is central, because, of course, it will help to build trust, and later to make that the people will use this service when it's deployed in their neighborhood. For the next level, because it's the topic today of our session, the next level of a large-scale demonstration, I really would advise to really integrate into the citizens' daily life. So we cannot conduct trials on a remote area anymore, and only over 1 week for a bit of advertising. I mean, we can do that, that's fun, as I said before, but now we really need to go into the ground, I would say, into real life, real mixed traffic. That's more on the technical side, but also on the people's daily lives, and over a long period of time. So it needs to be integrated in their everyday lives. And only by doing this, we will have this deep understanding of the benefits and the limitations for all. And I emphasize this for all, because having these long time demonstrations like we have in the show project will enable to really reach every possible users of CCAM and understand if it's beneficial or not for them and work on what can be improved. Next slide, please. That will be my last slide. So to be considered for the next level, what I really advise is to consider the needs of the whole population, to have really CCAM for all. You have heard about during the last in the last sessions, the previous days, citizens about special needs. We mentioned, for example, persons with reduced mobility in wheelchair, for example. So we need ramps. We need to be sure about accessibility of the services. But I like also to mention, for example, non-tech savvy people, meaning the citizens among all of us, that, for example, are not really literate with digitalization. Some people do not own a smartphone. Some people do not have access to internet. So you need to also think of them. For example, if you deploy a mass service, so really having an application to book an on-ride, a ride with an AV, how do you access the people who do not own a smartphone? That's very important. You also need to consider the local context, and this is something that it's a great chance that we have in Europe, that we have all this variety of cultural, of geographical background, so we can really have this huge diversity, but at the same time, we will not have one solution for CCAM. We will need to consider really the needs of each population, how people move around, what's the cultural background, how are their perception, for example, about like if for them, how they perceive public transport in general. All these things you need to consider, and that's great that in Europe we can test in these many areas, and that's also what we do in the show project to have this diversity. You also need to consider diversity mobility profiles. It may sound like a small point, but it's that beyond demographic, when you look at citizen, you also need to look at mobility profile, meaning one person can be at a moment of the day a commuter, but at another time a tourist, a shopper, and so on. And the mobility needs change depending on this. Keep that in mind when planning your large-scale demonstration. I also advise to include the citizen from the beginning of the project so that you can really shape, and why not shaping the demonstration to their needs. So don't wait that everything is put in place, that all the vehicles are deployed to ask them, hey, what was your feeling about it? But really having them on board from the beginning can be interesting. And that's what we are doing in the show, starting already now, getting in touch with the citizens, although our deployment will be next year. I also advise to use a variety of methods. For example, we know the questionnaires, the surveys, you have filled them many times, I guess, but there are other ways like ideation and or dialogues with citizens directly. And for these two last points, I advise you to go this afternoon to the breakout session 9. Into such methods will be discussed and presented in correlation with CCAM. And that was on next. There is like just a very final slide. Thank you very much for your attention. If you need any more info on the show project, don't hesitate to get in touch with me, and I'm looking forward for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Henriette, for this very interesting overview and as well the importance of gathering the views and needs from citizens. I mean, we are often speaking about acceptance, but for me, that always sounds like a bit imposing and creating the willingness to use the systems. But what we actually need indeed is, as you said, to understand the needs from the beginning and involve the citizens from the start. And it's often not what we expect. So you mentioned indeed that it's important that we involve everybody, and that was also highlighted by Director General Holloway yesterday, that nobody needs to be left behind. So in show for the demonstrations, how do we make sure that actually no citizen is left behind? Henriette?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for asking this. Yeah, in shows, it's a challenge. I have to say it's a challenge because there is a risk that you always. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I continue. There is a risk that you address always kind of the same people that are really about technologies, that are really excited about mobility and so on. But now we really need to target also the citizens that may not be very familiar with technology and so on. So and now it's even more difficult because of COVID, because we have these situations that we can only address people through internet, and this reduced a little bit the pool of participants that we target. But fortunately, starting next year, and we really hope that we can conduct the demonstration in good condition, and that the pandemic will I don't know how to formulate it, will not be the case. And there, in the local place where we have all our demonstration, we have our local ecosystem in place. And we hope that, and not we hope, but we know that there, in this local ecosystem, our partners within Show have already their connection to the users, to the citizens on the locally. And so we will be able to connect with them, to a very great variety of people, and hopefully no one will be left behind.
Thank you, Henriette. So we will also have an interesting session about that this afternoon, the breakout session 9, organized by Ingrid Skogsmo from VTI. So I invite everybody to attend that one. So let's go now to our next speaker, which is Armin Gräter. So Armin Gräter is Technical Product Manager, Automated Driving at BMW. He's the chair of the CCAM partnership and also co-chair of the ERTICO working group Connected Automated Driving. And he will speak about the need for technology development and validation. Armin, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Stephane. And if I may have my slides, thank you very much. Yes. I try to do it a bit differently. I think I have some key messages. So 3 slides, 3 messages. This is the first one. I just jump in and refer to what has just been said on acceptance. There's one point I'd like to make there. Within BMW now speaking, we did the experience that as soon as you get customers in automated vehicles, you will have the full acceptance. So it's all about getting the experience. There's many theoretic things which are kind of anxious, making people and many things where people think it's dangerous and so on. But as soon as they get in touch with the technology, they are completely convinced. I can really promise this is our experience in many different use cases where we had automation tests within BMW. So I'm completely sure that when we get to the level that, like in Show, that public is confronted with the technology, and I'm sure Dimitri later will show the same, and Daniel, that acceptance is not the big issue in the public, but as it is a theoretic problem, it can also be a problem for the introduction. That's why large-scale demonstrations are so important. This is exactly the point. But like what I like to say here is that there are many steps to go. And I heard in this conference, but also outside the conference, sometimes in the past, in the last days and weeks, that many people expect for 2030, which is the end of the CCAM partnership, or the first step of the CCAM partnership, let's say so. Hopefully it will be longer. That then is the automated technology, automated mobility, CCAM, is deployed already in large scale. What we are doing here is large scale demonstrations for these 10 years. And I really like to bring the expectations a bit down. Sorry for being not so overwhelmingly positive, but we should be realistic on what is happening really in technology. Seeing that automation is on trial, let's say, and in first steps like level 2 for now 20 years. We started with level 1 adaptive cruise control in 2000 in the automotive industry, and we are now on level 2, which is the lower, which is the whole area of this chart. But then going to level 3 or 4, which is hands off, eyes off, and later level 4 autonomous, so without a driver. this would be many steps, and there are two main arguments. The vehicle speed is very essential because energy in the vehicle quadruples with the double speed. So it's very dangerous to drive fast, and the technology is really crucial, and the sensor reach and everything needs to be even longer developed before we can reach full highway speed, for example, 130 kph. That's why urban mobility should be very much in the focus. And saying that, we also can, from a technological point of view, from the vehicle industry and also the suppliers industry, we can say that the rural use cases, so country roads, they combine not the density, but the complexity of city traffic with pedestrians and bicycles and even farmers and wildlife, together with the high speed of 100 kph. So this is really the biggest challenge of the future. And so autonomous mobility will be a very small use case in the next 10 years for country roads. It could happen on specific applications, but very not in the focus. The focus should really be the urban use cases, urban shuttles, and so on. Next slide, please. What we are having in the CCAM partnership is the Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda. And what we are having here is the 7 clusters. And I'd like to highlight here the cluster 1, because we are talking about large-scale demonstration in this breakout session. And it's a very clear picture, and I simply try to change a bit the logic of the logo of the partnership, which is a circle, and the center is the cluster 1. It's also from a time-wise perspective, cluster 1 is not only the center, but also the outcome, the main outcome. So all the steps of the clusters are necessary. Stephane will help us and coordinate everything with cluster 7 around all the whole story. But we have the technology enablers in cluster 2 and the key enabling technologies in cluster 5. We have validation of everything in cluster 3. And we have the very important part of, especially for urban, integrating the vehicle into the traffic system, which is cluster 4. And not to forget cluster 6, which will be mentioned in the breakout 9 now for the impact assessment and acceptance. This is very important. So all these things will deliver to having successful large-scale demonstrations. And if the chart can be seen completely, you could see that on the third line of these 3 work streams of cluster 1, it's the big large-scale demonstration for the last phase of the project from 2017 to 2020, 27 to 30, sorry, to really show large-scale applications in many ODDs in one area with many use cases. This is really the big target, but this is still not deployment. Large-scale demonstration, I would expect to have really a higher number of 3-digit vehicles on roads, so with many rides for people and goods. And so this is for the demonstration area, it's a significant part of the traffic, but only for the demonstration area. Before the whole CCAM applications will be a significant part of the overall traffic as a whole in Europe. This is a longer story. So I really like to state here that large-scale demonstrations is a big step forward, and we will reach it for the last phase of this decade, but then deployment will come later. The next slide, please. And this is an idea which we tried. I'd like to sorry for being so pragmatic, to test the idea which is behind this chart. So what we are doing parallel to the CCAM partnership is drafting just now a new air truck roadmap for the CAD working group. And the schematic idea is that we have domains which are mentioned here, corridors, which we have already, ITS corridor, you know them. We have the Testfeld A9 in Germany and many others. They will lead to having higher automation on highways. This is not only level 3, but also many cooperative and connected functions. This is one very important step to mastering speed. So we with these use cases, we will understand how connectivity in real time works in high speed, which is a big challenge for the connectivity industry. We will see what the sensor reaches are, which are necessary for having good functions there. And then we have the second part, which is exactly the graph which I showed before from the ERTICO roadmap 2019, by the way. This is the use cases of around urban and low speed, so mastering traffic's complexity. It just starts now with level 4 parking in the next months and years, like on the highway with level 3. Then we will see many applications and see already the first applications on confined areas with very, very narrow use cases in very restricted ODDs, which will lead to urban mobility. So the big thing of the next decade will be demonstrating shuttles. I think this is really the most important use case in the whole CCAM partnership. And you see, and this is not by coincidence that I drafted the rural graph a bit smaller, because this combines again the speed and the traffic complexity. That's it from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Armin. So I think it's good that you highlighted indeed that the focus should be urban use cases, but you pointed out this complexity of the rural environment. So we still have a lot to do as well. Then beyond that, I just have a quick question for you. So I mean, I guess that beyond research, there are still several challenges as well to prepare for the deployment. So are there some aspects that you are focusing as well on that partnership? Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for this question. This is really a personal high motivation from my side as well. I think without having only, let's say, research results is not enough for preparing deployment. There are two key steps which are already mentioned in the SRIA of the partnership as well, and also in the ERTICO roadmap. This is, sorry. This is the standardization, the technical standardization, which is running very well as well, but still many steps to go and many different initiatives around the world which are not yet harmonized. We are having SAE standards which are not completely aligned with ISO standards. We are having other, let's say, more private organizations which try to set standards. I think for Europe, and this is also the let's say, the heritage of Europe, we should focus very much on ISO standards. And there's a lot of work to be done for the industry to set these standards and make them world leading and world dominating as well. So this is a huge work which is done by the industry and many partner service providers and technical services, and many are combining here. And this is very important to set these technology so that at last this scales of economy and the economy of scales will run into the technology of automation. Only with this we will end up with business cases which will help deploying the technology. The second part is regulation. This was already mentioned in many discussions as well. And we are also on a very good way, and it's everything is in the right direction. Maybe the speed could be a bit higher to really have regulations. But on the other hand, as long as technology is not yet mature, it's always difficult to make regulations which fit to technology. And this is the key for it. So it's really a new situation where we have to always have the right balance between technology research, standardization, and regulation. And together, all the three will lead Europe to success, I'm absolutely sure. So we are just in between our big competitors like USA and China, which having completely different approaches. But I think we are on a very good way in Europe there. Thank you.
Thank you, Armin. Okay, just now before we go to the next presentations, I have a very quick Slido question for the audience, if we can show it. That will answer also some of the, where we ask some of the questions that Armin just mentioned. So for the next level of CCAM demonstration, what is the highest priority in your opinion? You can rank the answers for between 1 for low priority and 3 for high priority. So is it about reaching a minimum speed, operate without safety drivers on board, address higher complexity in urban environment, test user-friendly service design, or implement an efficient organization for the local ecosystem? We will let the poll run during the next presentations and look at the results at the end when we will start the questions and answers. So you can take your time to answer and select the priorities. So I would now like to go to our next speaker, which is Professor Dimitri Konstantas. So Dimitri is director of the Information Science Institute of the Geneva School of Economics and Management, University of Geneva, and he's member of the Interfaculty Computer Science Center. And he's currently leading the Horizon 2020 EU project Avenue, targeting the deployment of autonomous vehicles in public transport. He will present about insights from the EU-funded Avenue project. Dimitri, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, can you hear me? I agree with Armin, what he said just before, that the deployment of autonomous vehicles will take some time, but I disagree that in his time frame. Actually, Armin is talking about autonomous vehicles for private use, where there he talked about 130 kilometers on a highway. That is correct. It will take years to go there, but there is another domain of autonomous vehicles where I see that they are almost ready to be deployed tomorrow, practically. We're talking about public transportation. Remember, in public transportation, you're in a city. Speeds of the buses today, if they exceed 50 kilometers, the passengers will be scared to death. So inside the city, average speed of buses do not go more than 30, 40, 50 kilometers in exceptional cases. I know in Geneva, average speed is 25 kilometers in the center of the city. So there we have much less challenges for speed, much more challenges than private vehicles on highways. And we are almost there. We have it, the technology is there, everything is almost ready. So that's what we're going to show you, what we are doing in Avenue, which is, next slide, please, which is a 4-year project. We are now on the 3rd year, and after 3 years, we are deploying autonomous vehicle or automated, fully automated minibuses that are running on a real site with real passengers on open roads, providing services. So the project, as I said, we are talking about public transportation. It's a different model. We have different needs, different acceptance rules. So let's see what we have done. Next slide, please. What I will present to you, I will talk a bit more, is the deployment we have today that it's operating at Melide. That this is one of the 6 sites, actually. We have 2 new sites that they're joining in the Avenue project. This is a big site, 36 hectares. That's a hospital, but it's mixed population. Right and left of the hospital, there are residential areas, there are schools, there's even a stadium next to it, a commercial center. So a lot of people are using it. And at this point, we are deploying 3 autonomous vehicles, 3 minibuses of Navia, that they are operating almost 100% operator-free. we although we now are transferring people between buildings, we are also transferring students. We are also transferring people that they're just living around. And we are able to provide a high quality service. The vehicles that we are using, they are minibuses. They are autonomously driven. The operator will intervene just in case there is an accident. There is a car that has stopped in the middle of the road and blocking everything. Well, like in the Suez Canal blocking, let's say, situation. The vehicle can bypass bicycles, can bypass normally parked cars. This has been programmed. And the only thing, the only interaction that we have, it is the passenger with an application who is able to just call the vehicle. A fleet management system by Best Mile allows to identify which is the best one, send it over, pick him up, take him to his destination, and life goes on for after that. So this is something that it is operating. It is there. I mean, if you go to our site that we have, there is a video that we have published showing it, and we are waiting to invite people to come and see it. So what we're saying is we are almost there. The technology is, say, a small advance that is required to have it working. However, life is not easy. Next slide, please. Next slide, yes. Now, to reach this point, it's not the user acceptance. User acceptance, we have it. People are very happy to use it. They are not afraid. But there are all the legal issues that we had to face. It is not easy to get the authorizations required because the laws do not allow that. For example, in public transportation, in all the countries, the law is clear. There must be a fixed route and there must be fixed bus stops. The moment we say on demand, door to door, there is no fixed route. There are no bus stops. But this is not compatible with the law. At Belide, we got an exceptional authorization from the authorities that they are highly collaborative in Switzerland to allow us to experiment. However, we still have to fulfill some part of the law that says, well, accessibility. People with wheelchairs, they have to be able to enter. How do we do it? So we had to install some part of infrastructure. But we cannot install infrastructure everywhere. If it is on demand, how we do it? Where we go? In Belide, in order to fulfill the law, we defined 78 bus stops, virtual bus stops. That is almost everywhere. Yes, I know, we exaggerated. In an area that normally had only 4 bus stops of a normal bus, we came to 78. But this is the only way to allow on-demand door-to-door. Other thing is what we realized that we have a driver in all buses, and all public transportation services are based on the notion of a driver who is not only driving the car, but it provides multiple formal and informal services. For example, you have a normal bus and a tire is flat. It is the driver who will identify it. Somebody vomited, yes, it happened that late on the night after, well, once upon a time when the bars were open and the restaurants were there, people at night had some small accidents in the bus. Well, it's the driver who will see that. Lost objects, forgotten objects. Now, when the driver is suppressed, right, who will do all his job? It has to be done automatically, which means we need services to replace all those driver, let's say, services. And then, of course, his business model, not yet understood well. Today, we have public transportation fixed routes. If we ask the bus to go everywhere, well, sorry, where it will come? I will ask it to go 50 meters to go to the bakery. And that will double, triple the kilometers, of course, creating another business model. How much it will cost? What will be the price? Do we charge more for people that they make short trips or not? So this thing is yet to be understood and get some kind of solutions. And of course, technology is still under evolution. We are not perfect yet. We have to do many things, but we need to evolve, but this will happen. Technology is evolution. I have total trust in technology and engineers. Things can happen, but the business models, the services, that's another issue that we have to attack right now. Next slide, and I'm over. Thank you. Visit our site, you will see the different demonstrations that we have and the services right now that we are offering.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dimitri. I think you clearly show here that indeed Avenue is really most probably a first really full on-demand door-to-door public transport service. And you raised very interesting points already according to you related to the deployment and what needs to be done next to have real services. I just have a very quick question for you because you were quite optimistic as well about the deployment. So will you be able to operate without a safety operator on board in the Avenue project?
Very good question. We hope soon. The thing is that the law does not allow that. There are a whole construction from the United Nations, the Vienna Convention, all the way down to national law. But at least in Switzerland, the public authorities, they simply told us, well, run now with a safety driver, safety operator, and that it will do nothing. Prove it to us for 6, 7, 8, 9 months, and then we will consider giving you authorization to operate without it. So we must first prove that we can do it. Right now, in what we will do in Belly Day in the future, we are by law, we must have an operator, but we will use an invisible operator. The law in Switzerland allows us to have as operator anyone, that is students, 20 years old, without a uniform. What is important is to see the reaction of the passengers when they enter and they do not see, they cannot identify an operator. That is important. The operator today in Belly Day is just doing social work, talking to the people and reassuring them. So we can drive without him, but we cannot by law. But we need also to know the reaction of the people. So for us, if all goes well, I believe that in a year from now, we will be able to prove to the public authorities that, we can make without the operator. Let us give us a try. And then changing the laws, that is another story that we have to ask the politicians. Can take 1 month, can take 25 years. I have no idea.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dimitri. There was an interesting event yesterday as well, organized by ZF and Navia, where this was discussed, and I understood that it's in a good path already to be solved. Our next speaker will be Nadège Faul. So Nadège is director for the large-scale demonstration projects of connected and automated mobility at the VEDECOM Institute. And among other projects, she's involved deeply in the coordination of the SAM project, which is a major French project that will be the focus of her presentation. So Nadège, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Stephane. Good morning, everyone. I'm waiting for my slides, maybe. Okay, thank you. You can go directly to the next slide. So SAM is a... Next slide, please. Thank you. So SAM is a French national project started in June 2019, and it's a large-scale demonstration project gathering 16 demonstrations on 16 different sites. They are relying on various use cases, and you can see in the bottom left map in yellow we have private cars usage, level 3, but we also have in SAM a very strong focus on shared mobility. These are the green use cases, and the shared mobility is operated on various vehicle platforms like shuttles, but also level 4 passenger vehicles. And in red, we have droids for last mile delivery. This wouldn't be possible without a strong and close partnership with the local cities and the local authorities. So we have 15 local governments and administrations with whom we work very closely on a daily basis. And we are gathering 18 industrial and academic partners in the project. All this for what? All this is to set up a framework of assessment going from technical aspects such as safety and ODD evaluation to acceptance, users and citizens' behaviors, the impact on the environment, on the traffic and congestions, and the overall socioeconomic impacts. And all those assessments are using both experimental data coming from the FOTs and rely also on simulation tools when the data is not sufficient. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is a focus on the various simulation tools that we use in SAM, and we use the FOT data to calibrate. The first one is a simulation environment to demonstrate the AV safety validation. And of course, we use the data from the existing FOTs to combine them with a 3D representative environment and to realize this simulation environment. And this is done by our partner institute, Systemix, in charge of safety validation in SAM. But we also use various simulation tools to assess the effects on the environment and on the traffic and surface efficiency. And these are tools developed by both VEDECOM, the IFPEN, and CEREMA for emissions and air quality. And of course, for those tools, we have the existing nutshell, the existing tool, but we use the FOT data to calibrate them and evaluate the effects of upscaling. Next slide, please. So what have we learned so far, apart from the results of the evaluations, which are not ready yet, of course? We learn from every day working together with the local partners and ecosystems. So the first lesson is that the research questions that our researchers have defined are still very theoretical and they need to be practical. And this practicality is acquired by a close cooperation with the local partners. And this wouldn't be possible without really FOT and large-scale demonstration projects. There is also a need to organize the networking and the knowledge transfer between the existing demo sites who are really scaling up and the next sites, which will be the playgrounds for further projects or for the deployment. And we have created a structure which we call the Collège des Territoires, and this is really a networking structure which is probably going to expand after the end of the project, organizing the knowledge transfer among the local partners. And we need everywhere to increase awareness from both the users of the vehicles, but also all the citizens, the neighborhoods, the associations, really the global ecosystem needs to increase the awareness and to share the knowledge among all those stakeholders. But we also have current limitations. The first one being the capacity of the technology, the systems so far, the vehicles, infrastructure and supervision. And we are stuck with what we have. And it's improving, but we would need to have a greater level of technology development to test more services. The services tested are still too limited by the limit of the fleet, the number of vehicles we have, the density we have in the territories, the performance of the service, the quality of the service we are able to provide now for testing. And some issues still cannot be addressed for technical or regulatory reasons. I mentioned here, for instance, the willingness to pay, which we cannot test because we do not have the quality of service that will allow us to ask people for paying. So these are still open questions. Can we go to my next and last slide? So what do we need now to move forward? We need to test, on our view, we need to test a real service on a long period and in real world conditions. So what are the criteria for this real test? well, we need a higher technological performance and especially the speed of operation. If we want to leave very limited ODDs and very limited itineraries and services, we need to have a better and higher speed of operation. We need a higher service quality, and we need this service quality to match the standards of competition, the existing today competition with traditional mobility services. Otherwise, we might just as well kill the idea before launching it. We need to have clear operational rules, and the first one being to know which ODD we are addressing, but also to remove the attendant from the board, because we need to test this and to set up the real business models without the safety driver on board. We need to provide a real answer to the mobility needs of the territories we choose. And we need to choose very wisely where we are going to do the next steps, because we need to answer a real mobility need. We need to have a full integration in the public transport, which means basically the open data for transport, the pricing and ticketing systems ready to be tested, the time schedule of the transport of the service being integrated, the access and transport order, everything should be really tested all together to assess the response from the market. We need to address also the accessibility issues, and we are lacking a lot of solutions for the vulnerable users and the disabled people now to get into those automated vehicles and to access to them, and we need to work on that. And we need to set up and define the criteria for the replication, the deployment of the vehicle, and to assess the potential markets. And this is what I wanted to tell you today.
Thank you very much, Nadège, for this interesting overview as well of all the activities that you do in SAM. And I think you answered already also some of the questions that we have asked in the poll, so it's good. Just a quick question. So I understand you are more or less midway through the project. So do you have the vehicles actually already running?
Yes, we have two demonstration sites already running, one in Vincennes, near the Paris area. They are already operating and transporting people every weekend. And we have the second one in Toulouse, has started already, and they are preparing to remove the operator from the vehicle within the next couple of months. So those two have started, and we have 3 or 4 additional ones starting this year. And of course, we have had a strong delay due to the sanitary crisis, but we are now on the track again to resume the operations.
Thank you, Nadège. Yes, indeed, COVID is certainly a challenge for these demonstrations. Okay, let's move quickly to our last speaker, which is Daniel Avdajic. So Daniel is CEO of AV Living Labs and the elected member of the Ljubljana City Council. And you will present insights from the AV Living Labs project. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I'm Daniel Avdajic, and I would like to share with you why we need city labs and why the next level of testing autonomous mobility will move to urban environment. So the next slide, please. So now I will show a little bit of a scale-up approach that we did in Slovenia. So first, I want to show the city lab, which is a district city within a city, on the private ground with 21 million visitors and 11 kilometers of road on the private ground, where we conduct autonomous driving, connected and shared use cases and proof of concepts. On the next slide, I want to show that we are moving from city as a lab to country as a lab, where we are bringing, a simulator where we have a digital twin of our urban mobility. Then we have motorways. On motorways, we can test different scenarios than in urban, like vehicle to infrastructure, truck platooning, and also, 5G in different areas close to Alps, bridges, and tunnels. And then we also have a proving ground for other system testing, vehicle detection, person detection, also cybersecurity, where we can do in a closed proving ground. And then we are moving on the next slide from country as a lab to some, let's call it region as a lab, where back in April 2019, 3 countries have signed trilateral agreement for cross-border autonomous driving testing, Austria, Hungary, and Slovenia, and with special focus on mobile networks and communications like 5G. So what happens when you need to do a handover? Then it's different legislation, science, and also different behaviors. And this can be a real-life testing. So we are a true believer of real-life testing. So on the next slide, I will just show what are our lessons learned. So number one, why we need city labs or living labs, because this is a reality check. These are open innovation platforms where everything is done in partnership with citizens. And we need to distinguish different group of citizens. Of course, one are experts, another one are driver and passenger, but then there are also citizens who are not involved in autonomous driving. And when we talk about public acceptance, I would like to upgrade this to community embracement, and then it's very critical to basically run those kind of tests in city labs. And what city labs can offer, they can offer different infrastructure. So they are data rich, content rich, infrastructure rich. So for example, we have a strong smart grid installation with battery farms, for storage. Then we have charging stations, photovoltaics, and we can do different kind of large-scale demonstration how it works, because the devil is in details, and we all know that lack of multi-stakeholder can prolong, the adoption of autonomous vehicles in those kind of environments happens faster. And on the next slide, we would show our proof of concepts. So we are saying, when we are more informal, that this is like a Disneyland for engineers. So as you can see, we are in city labs, you can do from mobility to smart city, to fintech, to smart grid proof of concept. And at the end, for best user experience, you need to solve also other challenges beyond autonomous mobility, like wallet parking. Okay, but then you need to, and also like vehicle to infrastructure communication or vehicle to vehicle communication. And in these environments, for example, you can test during the massive event how the 5G networks can provide still the latency and the density needed, for vehicles to operate, or some protocols to work while reserving the electric grid. So on the next slide, which will be also my last, is we are looking for city labs around Europe to connect, because the role of city labs could also be some kind of governmental labs. We need to engage with NGOs, governmental bodies, different agencies. I was also yesterday on Slovenian event talking with people from justice departments, so who can access the data during the crash, and also with police departments, investigators, and so about the role and responsibilities and liabilities. And this can happen in some city labs where multiple stakeholders can participate. And what you can see on the right side is the building blocks. City labs around Europe can offer to the developers and researchers a lot of building blocks that are already existing. And we are talking about real life interaction, real life environment, real people, not focus group where you need to pretend that, and show your genuine reaction. Here in our environments, really, we can really provide real life feedback and working on public acceptance. So public acceptance is made basically from two things: past experience and perceived value. And by doing the large-scale demonstrations, we figured it out in our environment that people after driving this autonomous vehicle were extremely happy. So we got extremely high points. But the truth is that this was only 200 meters of programmable autonomous drive in closed environment. And going to public autonomous mobility, in our environment, road and bicycle line are side by side. So we tried to test bicycle driver, of course, in controlled environment. This was our internal personnel, and autonomous shuttle driving, and it was really not possible because it was required 5 meters of open space, or autonomous vehicle would slow down from 28 kilometers per hour to something like we were playing like 5 kilometers, which is for citizens not acceptable. So going back, those reality checks and what it showed is also, you know, that autonomous vehicles still have in urban environment difficulty with acceleration and braking, which means that they are predicting, they have lidars, they can see everything. But once you're coming closer to a vehicle, then of course there is still a lot of research work needs to be done. And in my last message is also city labs around Europe can be also used beside accelerating the development of autonomous vehicles, also to contribute to passenger economy, which was predicted by Intel that it will be 7 trillion industry by 2050. So what kind of role retail can play? What kind of role, you know, office on the wheels can play? Different use cases that needs to be defined. And for that, we really encourage that around Europe, city labs should organize and connect and basically work together, because we need to connect, share, and contribute so that we accelerate the autonomous mobility for all. So thank you. This is all from my side. Sorry, I cannot hear you.
Sorry, indeed, I was on mute. Yeah. No, thank you very much indeed for your great presentation about all the equipment and all the activities you have in your living lab. Because we are a bit short on time, I will go directly to the question, but I think you really highlighted well the importance here to promote autonomous driving large-scale pilots in European living labs. Just quickly, before we start with the question and answers, I would like to look at the results of the poll. We can see this. Okay, I don't see them. Does somebody see the results? Can we see the results of the poll? Okay, can one of you has one of you access to the poll results? I'm sorry, I don't see them on my screen. I understood that a few minutes ago the highest vote was on the address higher complexity in urban environments. And then second was implement an efficient organization for the local ecosystem. And the third priority was operate without safety driver on board.
Still the case, Stephane.
Is it still the case?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic, great. Okay, then I would just like to quickly ask each of you to reflect on that. I mean, for example, as now address higher complexity is really voted. So maybe Nadège, I think that was one of the things you mentioned as well. Do you agree with these results?
Yes, absolutely. Addressing higher complexity will allow to operate more complex services. We can start with very limited and simple ODDs and driving environments, but if we want to deploy real services and be a game changer in the urban mobility, then we need to address the real complexity of cities, and this is still a long way to go.
And Armin, I think that's also what you mentioned. I mean, that's the progressive evolution in this deployment path that you illustrated. I guess you also agree that would this be the highest priority for you as well?
Absolutely. I fully agree. And it's very nice to see that the majority of participants have the same opinion. That's clearly the biggest challenge. And seeing the real perfect and real very good work of Avenue and also Sam, and seeing many other things going around also in other parts of the world, you see that also most of the research money is going into this area, especially in the western states of USA, for example, but also in Shanghai and in Beijing, you see many of these things. So it's very important to really look, and I'm completely with Mr. Hollolay to say we shall not lose anybody behind. That's very clear and obvious, but we should look really into the use cases. Which use cases are the most relevant for the moment with the technology available for the different groups? So it's all about now in the planning process of the CCAM partnership to look into the use cases in detail on personal transport and goods transport, on connectivity, cooperation, and automation. So this is really the whole range of use cases which are open now for discussion. We were not able in this RIA to define them in detail. We will do a bit more work in the ERTICO roadmap, which is already a year later, let's say. So, and we will definitely work on that in the details of the future program of this RIA.
Thanks, Armin. And Henriette, I see that for them, reaching the minimum speed is maybe not so high in the priorities. Is this not a requirement in order to have a better user acceptance?
It is actually. Definitely, I think if it goes only 15 km/h, of course, it will not be very useful in the everyday life of the people. But I can understand a bit the point of view of the audience, emphasizing these other aspects. So, as you say, there is this higher complexity in urban environment, implementing an efficient organization for the local ecosystem and operate without a safety driver on board. And I think all these things are really essential so that the ground is made that we can operate really a service. So I want to come back on this idea of service that have been mentioned in all the presentations, actually. So that at the end for the users, there is really an added value that they can use it, is that they can benefit from it, and that we go away from this entertainment fun aspect, but really to the useful one that can be reached in their everyday lives.
Yeah, indeed. And Dimitri, so I think in the answers that we proposed, the business aspects or the law aspects were not mentioned, and I think you are really highlighted that this was a main challenge for you as well, that the law needs to be filled and adapted in order to have these experimentations going further.
Yes, that is something very important, because talking about public transportation again, there are laws about putting an autonomous vehicle on the street, and they have another set of laws of creating a public transportation service. A private car, you don't have to take wheelchairs, you don't have to take blind people, you know what you do. Public transportation is not like that. Accessibility to everybody is very important. Providing assistance within the vehicle is very important. And all this is controlled by law. And then, of course, adapting the law to a service that doesn't exist. As I said, there are no bus stops. Is this a taxi or not? It's not a taxi. It's a public transportation, shared. Can take you in front of your house. Today, that doesn't exist. It's inconceivable for public transportation. The same thing, pricing. We have no model of this pricing. Flat rates, I will have the tendency to take the bus just to go to the bakery 50 meters, because today I just walk. It's inconceivable today to take a taxi or a bus to go to the bakery 50 meters below. But then people will use it. So what do we do? How do you set it up? So all this part, for me, it's far more important to find solutions and validate than saying technology and making it to go faster. It will go faster. This is, in quotes, technology. It will evolve, and it evolves very fast, faster than we think. We will catch up. But making a service, making a technological gadget, let's say, a service, it's far more complicated.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's a very good point you raise with in order to achieve this deployment, the services should be a really strong focus. And the demonstration should have that really in mind when you set up a demonstration. Should focus on the service in the end and the citizens address that you want to address. Okay, and I guess that for
Armin wanted to say something.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank
you. Thank you, Dimitri. I fully agree what you are saying, and this is definitely the case. I'd like to even add another aspect to what you said, is that I really like to not any longer discuss so much about what is private and what is public, because we are here in a public-private partnership. That's the one part, but on the other side, as shared mobility is essential and key, and that's no question at all for anybody in the world anymore in the cities, it's very clear that we need to really mix up between private and public transport. So it's not any longer a clear distinction, and the operator of the metro may be interested in having shared shuttles in his fleet. The same will be for the sharing companies like they are today in the cities. They also want to gain more access to public transport and have their part in there. So the world is open, and the technology will lead us to the best solutions. And I really like to not make this clear distinction between public transport and privately owned cars. This is not the future of inner cities. That's very clear. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Armin, indeed. And I would like also to give the word to Daniel. So I think for exactly this purpose of the need to test in different environments and so on, are the living labs then the answer to that?
Yes, especially if other systems are better, to do it on closed proving grounds. There are also other areas like infotainment, telematics, basically cybersecurity, vehicle to infrastructure, bullet parking. There are other use cases where, city labs around Europe can contribute. And we are more like incubators or accelerators also for business development, different business model, different pricing schemes, different, cross-industry partnerships between, stakeholders from energy sector, retail sector, fintech sector. So we also did a project POC with face recognition technology, which can detect 8 types of mood. We also did a project with face recognition payment systems called Pay with a Smile. So there are other areas not related to, other systems that can be, tested, prototyped, validated in a city labs. And, at the end, it's quite complex story. And again, citizen engagement, we saw in our environment, it is a key, to win by demonstrating, showing, educating, and sharing with citizens, and not only focusing on drivers and a passenger, but citizens as all. And of course, multi-generation, not only younger, but also elderly and in between. So it is building an ecosystems.
Perfect. Yes, that was exactly the initial topics of my presentation as well. So I think building the ecosystem is essential for that, involving every stakeholder and the citizens, even not the obvious users of the systems, also the ones that will not necessarily use it, but will be impacted by these changes of mobility. Okay, thanks to all for this. So let's have a quick look at the questions and from the audience. I see 2 first questions here, which are actually more comments, if I understand correctly. So from Françoise, indeed, if we want to address the challenges and make the cities more sustainable, we need to have strong public-private cooperation. Indeed, that's very important. I agree, for testing, experiment, and exchange of best practices and scale it up. Involvement of citizens is key. As well, now speaking about the public and private cooperation, maybe I could like to extend it as well. So who are the main actors that you think should be involved in the next level of automated tests? Maybe Henriette, in order to make sure that we have services and in the end.
Yes, that's not it's very central. from us at UITP, the way we see it is really like having this system thinking and not focusing on the development of the vehicles, although it's important as such. But thinking, for example, of all the operators, the authority, that really all the technology suppliers that needs to be involved. And I think that's the only way really that we can achieve it if we work all together really as an ecosystem. I like the way also Daniel mentioned it, and involving the citizens, of course, as I mentioned, so that we can achieve the best goals, so that we reach the benefit for all players of CCAMs.
And you and Dimitri, yes. So Henriette mentioned the operators and so on. So in order to have this business case in the end and the deployment, you need to work directly with the operator to make sure that the service that you are demonstrating really remains operational after the end of the project.
Absolutely right. This is why the way you organize the Avenue project, the operators own the vehicles, they bought them, and they want to continue afterwards. They invest on that. If we don't have this strong engagement, it cannot be done. They are the users, they know best their customers, they know their needs. So for us in Avenue, all the operators, they have already put plans to continue after the project, continue offering the services. It's not just a demonstrator, it's reaching more like a normal service. What is interesting is that the people who are using it, they find it also extremely useful and they want to keep it. They don't want to leave it. Once you test it, you like it, and you want to continue. So,
exactly. Yeah, and that's also quite related to the question from Pierre Chewan on what is needed actually, or how you can support to bridge this gap between research and innovation and demonstrations and the real commercialization. So I'd like to ask this as well to Nadège. So what is here? Is it really only about financial support, or is it really more about this collaboration with all the stakeholders, and as well as you mentioned, the involvement of this local ecosystem? I don't know if Nadège, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Well, yeah, sorry.
I think we need both. Of course, we need financial support because we are in a phase of development and research, and that's requiring a lot of funds. But if you want to have something sustainable that will bring real answers and real services to the cities and the citizens, then we need to have all the local ecosystems, industrial ecosystems and research ecosystems working together. And on top of that, we also need to have some kind of harmonization at national and European level, because, of course, the services are not designed and meant to be deployed in one place. So we need to identify the real market, which is a global market. So of course, we need to have everyone working together. We need to increase that kind of collaboration.
May I comment as well?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So now I will comment as an elected member of City Council, and I would add that Dimitri is right. So public transportation companies should adopt those services, but we should not forget that public transportation companies were quite hit during the COVID. This is number one. Basically, number two is they are usually subsidized by the city budget and also the other budgets. And number three, one of the highest costs are the drivers. And this also goes to the question, which I saw it in the Amsterdam trains, they have an operator. So the public transportation companies are thinking how to basically reduce the number of drivers, because they have peak times, and basically during the morning hours and afternoon hours and in between, they don't need so many drivers and so many buses. So they have dynamic kind of shifts, meaning that you work for 2-3 hours, then you have a break, and then you return to the work again. So it's quite difficult. Therefore, also it's difficult to recruit and retain the drivers. So it means that public transportation companies are observing this space once technology will improve, they could be early adopters of it, maybe in 1 or 2 routes. They are also observing the on-demand, because in Ljubljana, we are preparing a pilot with vans and drivers and waiting for technology to come, to go from corner to corner, door to door. So this is happening, and soon, once technology will be ready, this will be deployed, because it's solving so many pains.
Armin, you had also a comment?
Daniel, thank you very much. This is exactly what my feeling was. I didn't hear it up to now directly from somebody responsible for that. Thank you. My question to you is, what can we do in the CCAM partnership to motivate local authorities and public transport services to be part of the partnership, and so take the lead in telling us what we need to do step by step to approach them as best as possible, as good as possible. So this is really one of the small things which we need to improve in the partnership. The representation of public transport and cities is not perfect.
May I comment on that, if it's okay?
Yes, yeah, please, Henriette.
As UITP, as Public Transport Association, I think it's your question is also not your question. What you mentioned, Armin, is really important, and I would say the people that are listening to us, if there are operators on board, please join, apply to join this discussion on the CCAM partnership and the association. And what we see, I think it will not work. It will not work without their involvement, because the question will be at the end, which type. So if we look at cities, at least, it will be really the question, which types of cities we want in the future, which types of mobility do we want in the city, which quality of life do we want for the citizen, and that's why these players need to be on board as well, because they are a part. Public transport is really a part of this quality of life in cities.
Thank you, Henriette. Yeah, thanks to all. I think that's definitely very important points. I would like, so we have still 5 minutes left, as we started late. We have about, we can go until 40. But I see here there's a question for Dimitri about the Avenue shuttle buses, capability to operate in -degrees with snowy conditions. Is this something you looked into?
Yes, actually, we did operate, not in Geneva. Geneva is not so hot, but in Copenhagen and in Sweden, with snow, with below 0 temperatures, and actually there was no problem. One of the advantages we have compared to vehicles like Tesla, who wants to have optical recognition, having LiDAR, we can drive on a street that has no lines, no nothing, it's just white, normal snow white, and there was no problem. There is a small video that it was made, it's on our site, showing exactly this case. Driving, stopping, recognizing, but nothing is happening. Clearly, there is a problem when there is very heavy rain and heavy snow. That's where the LiDAR and all the things are getting confused. But knowing that in many cities where there's heavy snow, there is no public transportation, everything is blocked one way or the other. So we don't improve, we just stay where we are.
Thanks, Dimitri. Okay, then I see a quick question, which is actually maybe for me, about mapping the CCAM landscape. Indeed, so it's looking at the map. That's exactly the idea, is that you can find out where things are tested, and simply it's related to geographical location. But what we see in Europe, what we've seen is that things are really tested all around Europe, up to very high in the north, because indeed we have also these very different conditions that are being tested thanks to our Nordic friends. And then and indeed there are some centers that pop up. There are some locations where indeed a lot is being tested, a lot of projects are active, and that's a very interesting thing. And as well, if we look at what we do, in addition, is also to look in our case, is to look at the results from the different projects in order to identify the different lessons learned. And this is what helps us as well in seeing what has been tested, where there are some synergies. The idea is really to avoid redundancies and defining the next priorities. For the last minutes, I just would like to ask all of you for the like we say, this famous last words. So would like to ask each of you, one after the other, what would be for you the most important thing that should be considered for the next level of large-scale demonstration, and what is the next important milestone towards the deployment? So if we can start maybe with Henriette.
Sure.
Just one minute.
Very briefly, I think I would say we need to think systems. We need to think on this multi-layer level and not focus on vehicle technologies only, but think really at all the sites, at the digital infrastructure, at the physical infrastructure. Really think system so that it works and the service will be possible afterwards.
Okay. Armin?
Yes, it just came to my mind again, even stronger after hearing the presentation. Thank you for all of them, that technology needs to be evolving, regulation needs to be in place step by step with the technology, but at last it's about not the basis is the user, that's clear. So the use cases need to be designed to be accepted, and at last it's about the business model. So as long as it's not financially viable, even for public transport or private organizations, which is in the future the same, this is an important idea. I think we need to have viable business models to get this into life.
Thank you. And Dimitri?
Well, everything is said. I mean, Armin just said business model, and I would agree. Not only business model, ticketing models, and also design, urban design. There are many cities now that they are considering stopping private transport in the big center of the city. So, and we're seeing it everywhere, making streets pedestrian, whatever. So we have to work not only with the technology business model, but with the city itself to see how the future city will evolve and what will be included. Do we stop private transportation? Do we only have public transportation? What do we do? So the city authorities or urban design should also be part of the game.
Yeah, very good. Very good point indeed. Then Nadège.
Yes, for us, the real next milestone will be to have a real service pilot. And for this, we need a better quality of service, which means increased number of fleets and higher performance. And if we have that, then we can test and define the environment, the business models, and how to better design the service for the next markets.
And finally, Daniel.
Building ecosystems and user experience, and then of course business model, so that to make all this work.
Perfect conclusion indeed. In the end, we need the business and the deployment. Okay, I think we reached the end now of this breakout session. So would like to thank you all, the speakers, for this great presentation and this great discussion. Definitely very interesting. I would like as well to thank the audience for their active participation, and of course all the organizers led by Henriette for setting, and Bo in the background as well, and Julie, Mats, and so on. So really thank you very much for helping in making this very interesting session. So for that, I would like to thank all of you and wish you still a good remaining day with many breakout sessions to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.